Good morning, everybody. Hello there. How are you doing? Welcome in. Today, we have a podcast. We have a podcast today. And actually... Oh god, did I fuck up my sound settings anyway? Raven, say hello.
Hi.
Okay, no, it's fine, actually. Please tell me if the music is too loud, everybody, because I had to change some things again. You can't see this, but Arwen has been attracted by a stream being turned on. Yes, hello, Arwen. Hello, buddy. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear that? Okay.
I can't.
Good. Good there. Hello, Robertson. Hello, Duck. Hello, Jail. Hello, Yorvithine. Hello, Flamer. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Lolius. Hello, Robertson. Again, twice. You go twice. Oh god, I'm gonna have to remove Arwen real quick. Arwen, please. Mother wants to do a podcast. I'm begging you. Today we are going to talk, surprisingly, about The Witcher. And if you're wondering about The Witcher 4, we have already talked about that last time, but we can talk about it a little bit more because people will still keep asking. And if you have any questions in the middle of us talking, feel free to ask. Arwen, please. Thank you.
Witcher 4 topic.
Yeah, we have one Witcher 4 topic, kind of. Not really. But the one that we wanted to talk about first is actually a question that we get a lot. But for the people that don't know us, how would you not know us at this point? But hello, I am Jinsey. I know a lot about The Witcher, and this is Raven. Say hello, Raven.
Hi. I don't know. I'm just the person that is here.
Also knows a lot about The Witcher, but is very understated. Hi, Willico. Hi, Carson. Good morning. So we are going to be talking about... should we ever make a big MMO type Witcher game, and what would that look like? And that question comes up so often in chat, and I pretty much always say no. But Raven, you tell us how you feel about that first.
I also think no. Like, my immediate reaction to hearing about, like, the idea of a Witcher MMO, like, I have such a hard time really visualizing it with that world. And I don't know if it's, like, I know that a lot of people would say, like, oh, there's a lot of lore there's a lot of stuff there for it, but I feel like the world wouldn't see its fullest potential in it for some reason.
No, I agree. And what Carson says as well, there would be too many witches running around. I think that's, as story nerds, that would really bother, at least me, because witches are supposed to be going extinct, right? So you'd have to find a reason.
You can't have, like, thousands and thousands of witches just running around.
No, exactly. And everyone's then going to the same quest giver, doing the same things. And I feel like The Witcher is very well served by being a single-player experience, feeling like you are really the only Witcher in the world that is capable of doing these things. And if you get that not the Elden Ring, the Elder Scrolls experience of everyone stacking up on a single spider, I don't think it's gonna have quite the same effect.
Everybody just doing the same monster contract, because that's what it would be. Huge.
No, exactly. And that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if you put it in the setting of where witchers were still very plentiful, but even then, I think simply because you're no longer the main character, it would ruin the experience.
And I think that, in general, it's like you said, it's just a bit... Stories told in that world, I think, are best told through a single-player story. I just, like I said, I have such a hard time visualizing.
Yeah, because, well, you'd have to have a huge world either way, right? And there would have to be something interesting to be done there everywhere. I think, in general, if you want a well-crafted story, it's not going to be up to par with the speed of consumption in terms of MMO players. I think if you start right now, you have a game like Final Fantasy XIV, and the main draw for me there is the story, but then you also have events and things like that, and it can all be a little bit silly. And I can just imagine that if they try to do something like that with a Witcher MMO, people would just get mad. They would get mad about the silliness. They would get mad because The Witcher isn't exactly what they want it to be, and there's people running around with, I don't know, purple tutus or something. That sort of thing. That's what an MMO is. There's a little bit silliness going around. And I have not read the Dutch translations, Jorvathine, and I don't really want to because I don't really like to read in Dutch anymore. Also, there is, I talked about this on stream before, there is actually not a Witcher Battle Royale. I thought that's what it was. It was a MOBA. There was a Witcher MOBA, and it was really bad.
I'm learning. Yes, I learned that it was really bad, so that's why I never heard about it.
Yes, it was called The Witcher Battle Arena. And there was a very buy-to-play or buy-to-win game. It was on mobile only, and it looked dreadful. It didn't live very long. I'm a little sad almost for the people in the comment sections of the trailers that say that they really like the game, but yeah, that existed. That was a thing, and never again. Did I just come in at the perfect time where we talk about how amazing an MMO Witcher would be? How dare you? A Witcher MMO would be the same issue for me when they added Demon Hunters to WoW. Oh, because they're supposed to be special, right? Everyone plays a peasant and the raid bosses are witchers? You don't want to pay after a contract! Okay, no, that... listen, hold on. Maybe you're onto something here. A Witcher MMO with Witcher is not a playable class. You are the poor fucking infantry. Yes! If we band together, we get bonus points, so that could work. Caramorn raid boss. A dozen witchers getting stuck in slime while 2 dozen sorcerers yell, Airton! Drop it with the Airton! Oh my god. Yeah, they would actually have multiple classes. They would probably add mages as one of the classes, but if you're playing a Witcher MMO, who isn't going to play a Witcher? There's going to be 90% Witchers. And everything else, you have maybe the Scoia'tael of archers there, and then you have the mages. Maybe warriors, but you'd be, what, a Temerian? You would be a poor fucking infantry? Or a witch hunter or something? It would be so hard to balance. All the variations on Geralt names. No, exactly. I just, oh man. I've never felt like it would be a good idea.
Also, I feel...
Yeah?
This is just a me thing. And I know that people who are more, like, into MMOs could probably speak differently because you guys have more experience than I do. I feel like if there were an MMO, I would just feel it would be missing, like I would be missing the more linear aspect of storytelling in a way.
I guess it depends on how they want to tell the story, but I definitely feel like they would have to cut things that you would come to expect of a Witcher 3. I feel like a lot of people, when they talk about a Witcher MMO, what they mean is The Witcher 3, but multiplayer. And that's not really possible, because The Witcher 3 is such a product of detail and love that you really can't put...
Like,
sorry?
No, I was saying, like, multiplayer is, like, I'm just saying, like, that ain't it.
No, people really think that it's easy to do. They would probably say something like, oh, we'll just get we'll take the assets from The Witcher 3 and just put them in MMO. That's just not how it works. And you would lose a lot of the story aspects and things like that to, for example, class balance. You would have a team for that, and you would have to have people, you have community managers in general consistently. You would have to have people that do have events, because you have to keep updating the content, which means the content can't be extremely high level, because MMO players especially burn through content so fast. You need a patch every half year at the very, very least. And I don't see that happening, personally. Not to be cruel about it, but CD Projekt takes their time making things, so making big patches, big worthwhile patches, will probably take a little bit of time.
Yeah, you would have, like, a lot of silence. It would be, like, I don't think it would be sustainable.
No, it wouldn't be. Also, in general, because if they want to be as high fidelity as The Witcher 3, imagine the server load. Oh my god. Has there ever been a low fantasy MMO? The whole premise kind of works against the concept. That is true as well. I feel like if you want to go with low fantasy, you'd almost have to not really make it a combat-oriented MMO. you'd want to be a Gwent player in the Witcher world. And I guess that exists because we have the standalone Gwent, right? Everyone's a Witcher. Bear School Witches are tanks. Cat School Witches are rogues. You get alchemy builds that are like CC utility class, and sign builds that are sorcerer. So we would only have sorcerer that's different. To be fair, you could actually put the alchemy builds on Manticore. You have a Manticore school, and they're very alchemy based. So you could even get away with that. And then Viper School? What would the Viper School be? If you had to pick. Rangers? No. I don't know. What would they be?
What was this the Viper School specialize in?
Assassinations of kings!
I mean, I guess.
No, I don't really know, actually. They don't really have anything that really stands out in terms of... They're very well balanced, almost, I want to say. Kind of like a wolf school. Hello, August. Yep. Hello.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you think of each school, they usually are like, oh, they all might specialize in something. And then there's, like, the wolf school, who's very, jack of all trades, in a way.
Yeah, no, exactly. Viper School specialization, Wild Hunt. Well, they're out of a job now. Feel that The Witcher isn't fit for an MMO, something like Final Fantasy and Warcraft does, because you have so many variety of classes and abilities. Yes, they've already set themselves up to be multi-class, right? As a Witcher, I feel like you have a limited amount of abilities. You do. And I actually don't feel like Jail's idea is very bad. I think if you were to make an MMO, that would be a good route to take. But again, story-wise, the game would need infinite kings to be assassinated. The Vipers all did dual wielding. I think the Cat School would be good at that too, though. Because I think their set is even very good for that. For the sake of State of Pride, I also wouldn't want them to do an MMO because it's a huge time sink and expensive. Yes, development of an MMO is extremely expensive.
Imagine if they made an MMO and they put a whole lot of time and money into that, and then, like, on top of that, they would still be making, like, The Witcher 4, and people would be like, but where's The Witcher 4?
Yeah, no, because they would probably have to pick and choose, right? They would have to drop a project for the MMO. And the MMO, again, I don't think it would even work out well. I really don't. MMOs in general. Yeah.
I think it's hard in a way now for an MMO to kind of stand out and make itself, like, really popular, which is, I think, the only way it would be sustainable. But it's like, I can't imagine a Witcher MMO being sustainable like that, like things like Final Fantasy, and it would probably just go below a lot of people's radars. I don't not to throw in a hot take here by accident. I was gonna say a little bit like Gwent. Honestly.
I mean, hot takes are the best takes. But yes, I see what you mean completely. I think Gwent, when you look at Gwent, the standalone game at the very least, what you can at least say is that there is less maintenance required than an MMO. Still a lot, but less. Because an MMO, again, it takes more to develop than people think. And I think a lot of companies, when they start up an MMO, and you had Amazon as the latest example for this, they started up New World and they did not realize how quickly people would burn through content. SWTOR had the same problem at launch. Everyone really still thinks that when an MMO launches, it'll be like vanilla World of Warcraft. But when vanilla World of Warcraft launched, no one really had the internet for walkthroughs, for video guides, people theory crafting, none of that existed, which meant that people had to figure things out for themselves a lot, so it was a little bit slower. Now, when a new MMO launches, people jump on that. Content creators jump on that because they see, you know, a fleshy new corpse to ravage. So there's gonna be guides about everything under the sun in the first week. And no one's prepared for that. And then they're suddenly out of content, and then all the videos start popping up about there being a content rot. And The Witcher being so focused on doing these deep, interesting, detailed stories, they would never be able to catch up. Absolutely not.
I also, I feel like games like New World kind of show, to an extent, how hard it is to make something that will last in the public eye in the sense of like New World was really huge when it first happened, but it's like you said, you kind of need to find a way to keep pushing stuff out to keep it relevant, and if it doesn't, then it really just falls by the wayside. Like, it takes a lot to like get to the level of like the other big games that are in that genre. And I feel like it would be the same thing with the Witcher MMO. It would be really difficult for it to sustain that ability to remain relevant in that genre, because it would be behind the game a bit, in the sense of like there's other games that are out there that like are way ahead of it already.
The Witcher 3 is way ahead of it already.
Yeah.
You could just play The Witcher 3 and you'd have more to deal with, because they took such a long time of developing that. And I also agree that I'm honestly I'm a lot sick of MMOs and live service games. I really want single players. Yeah. I want my single players back. Really. These days it's like, oh, I'm a week in and I've done everything. No, exactly, Energizer, exactly. New World even launched with guides available. They started. Oh my god, I forgot about that. Yes, it got worse somehow. When Vanilla WoW launched, it was also pretty crap. It was also great because it was new, and the community and the amazing feeling of doing something with a bunch of cool people for the first time. No, exactly. I think the vanilla World of Warcraft in general was very much still just like the older MMOs there, like EverQuest and such. It was a sense of wonder that you played for, not necessarily the content. It's almost like the players created the content themselves. No new MMO will start with the same type of bonus. Exactly, because everyone has already had their first MMO, or most people have. You've played at least one, and if you've played one MMO, at the moment you've played all of them, because it's all roughly the same template. I had to use dial-up to log into Alakazam. It was effort. Yes, but we don't. Okay, so I think we can agree that we do not want a Witcher MMO ever.
Yeah. They should stick with what they've been doing.
Yes, what they're good at, which is single player experiences that we love. So the next
proved
thing
successful, so like why try to fix something that's not broken?
No, that as well. But that's the thing, right? I think a lot of companies these days, they're getting pressured by the stockholders as well, the shareholders that say, oh, look at this thing that is very successful. Shouldn't you be doing this as well? And then the developers would have to explain that, no, they really should not be doing that. But the stockholders already see the money. So they're going to push them to try it anyway. And obviously it fails because it's not a very good idea. However,
I think that works a lot better with something that it's like, that the people making it are really passionate about. And it's like if they were pushed to create an MMO, you would be able to feel the fact that they might not be into it.
No, exactly. I feel like if CD Projekt didn't already have a concept idea in their head, if they were thinking, wow, I have the most amazing idea right now for a Witcher MMO, I really want to make it, I'm going to put my whole heart and soul into it. If they didn't already have that and someone just comes to them and says, hey, make a Witcher MMO, they wouldn't want to. They'd be bored. It's like writing a script about something that you have absolutely no passion for. Hi, Alice! Stockholders hate original concepts. They do, though. They really do. And I almost want to say, I wish the gaming industry was smaller. I wish games were not as popular as they are, because at the moment, a lot of it is dictated by money. Where in the past it was a little bit, but to a lesser extent. I feel to a lesser extent. There could still be very creative things. And right now, if you want something truly creative, you have to play indie games. And you have to go and find those indie games, which you have to dig for. And a lot of indie games have a lot of passion, and they're very good, but they don't get a lot of traction. They don't get a ton of attention. You have games like Death's Door that look really good, and they're very fun, and everyone enjoys them. But you don't really hear many of the bigger media outlets talk about it because it's an indie game. They don't have a budget to advertise. So a lot of people will never play that game, which is a shame because it's very good. This is now a Death's Door podcast. Whoops. The whole concept of stockholders and quarterly profits prioritized over long-term sustainability is extremely dumb and exhausting. Yes, and I think when it comes to MMOs, you can also definitely see that, because people have noticed when World of Warcraft has their quarterly coming up, they will generally release things like store mounts. And they will release things like the yearly subscription. So Yeah, it's not ideal. Also, good morning, Saturn. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Also, you're doing quite well. What about a Witcher ARPG? I think that could work better. I do feel like that could be better. But at the same time, I don't want to call it shovelware. But I feel like a lot of the ARPGs that have come out, I think the latest
I've never played Hades, but
Hades is amazing. I love Hades. But I think in terms of The Witcher, if you wanted a story like that, I feel like it would be very akin to Thronebreaker in that they would really need to push it. They would need to push the advertising really, really hard, and they would have to get people hyped about the story and the characters. Because just the concept of an ARPG, but you're a Witcher, is not that interesting, I think. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Raven?
I am much like Ellis. I have no idea what an ARPG is.
It's an action role-playing game, and largely think of things like Diablo.
Hey. And Diablo.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what Energizer just said.
I feel like even then, I was gonna say, it's like I feel like even then, it still has the. It would still be losing something that makes the franchise what it is. Like it would still feel a bit not right. In the sense of like,
yes,
it's kind of the same things we've said before. It's like The Witcher works well the way that it is. Kind of thing.
I think in general as well, I think a lot of people, because they love the Witcher games in general, they want to see more of it in different genres, which makes sense. But at the same time, why do you love The Witcher? You love The Witcher because of the story, I would assume, because of the characters. And ARPGs can have stories, obviously.
And weirdly enough, I feel like a lot of it is...
Yes?
No, I was gonna say, weirdly enough, I think it's also a thing of, like... I think it's, to some extent, a lot of people enjoy the fact that CDPR is one of the companies that are still very much willing to say, we prioritize single-player story games over multiplayer still. And I think to a lot of people, that's still, like, that's really nice in a world that's, like, swamped with a lot of multiplayer games.
Oh, 100%. But you could then make it an ARPG like Hades, which is a single-player game. At the same time, as much as I like Hades, Hades is a different beast entirely. Because you do follow the story, and they're very interesting characters, and I love them very much, but it is also gameplay focused. And that's the biggest draw, is the gameplay focus, still. Whereas in The Witcher, a lot of the times, especially in The Witcher 3, you have these moments where they're just sitting. They're sitting and they're talking, and that's it. And then you make choices about whether you want to do this or that to the characters. And there's also combat, there's making potions and things like that, and there's Gwent. And those are all very good also, but I don't think it's the majority reason for playing The Witcher 3. I think the majority reason for playing The Witcher 3 is that you want to see story. Right up close and personal, learn more about the characters in it, and that's not something you can get, really, in anything except a single-player RPG such as The Witcher 3. It wouldn't feel immersive with the story as compared to being third-person. Yes, I agree. Some people theorize the Golden Necker project will be a genre deviation, maybe a roguelike. I'd be interested in that as long as they make it an ARPG focus and they don't try to make it, it's The Witcher, but it's an ARPG, you know what I mean? Where they try to do a little bit of both. They have to go all in on making it a good ARPG first and a Witcher game second. Otherwise, you're just gonna, especially when it comes to ARPGs, you're gonna lose the crowd that's there for that particular genre. Battle Royale and always online games are dumb. I don't need to be called various slurs for 10-year-olds to have fun. Well, you wouldn't have to be on voice call with anybody, I hope. I just hope the next Witcher game has more engaging combat. I do agree with that. How do you feel about the combat in The Witcher 3, Raven?
I mean, I don't necessarily think it's the best combat in any game I've ever played ever. but I think it's an improvement over like The Witcher 2. I feel like there's a lot more flexibility with The Witcher 3, which I appreciate more than in Witcher 2.
Yeah, I agree.
Weirdly enough, I prefer Yrden inside of Witcher 3 over 2.
Yrden! Trap it with the Yrden!
It's... Yeah, and I also don't have to, like, hear a sorceress constantly yell that at me. That's the most relevant time that it's used inside The Witcher 2, honestly.
It is, yes. It's not super useful.
Other than when you're fighting wraiths. Because honestly, they're a pain in the ass when you're... And more so in The Witcher 2, I think, than in The Witcher 3 if you're not using it.
Wraiths are a pain in the ass in every Witcher game. Somehow. And there's, even with the Yrden, it's never fun to deal with them. What if fanboys were rejected because there's no Geralt in the poster? Well, it sounds like a fanboy's problem. Kappa.
We're lit up, I was gonna say that... I feel like that's weird. I was gonna say that's like Thronebreaker all over again.
It is. No, it is. You're right. Thronebreaker did have that problem because, well, Geralt appeared, but for 2 seconds. And
yeah, they put Geralt on the cover, and then he was only there for 2 seconds.
Well, Thronebreaker was done dirty because it honestly is. I think it's very good, but a lot of people don't give it the chance because it's not The Witcher they expect, and that's what I mean as well.
I really like Thronebreaker.
I did too. And the Witcher 3 combat, to come back, that I don't really like at all. I don't like any of the combat in any of the Witcher games. I don't think any of them are good. So this is the most flaming hot take I have. I don't like any of the Witcher combat because it feels like it's there because Witchers do fighting, but not necessarily because it makes the game better. I think it's always...
Yeah, I mean, it's also like...
Yeah.
When I played the game, I never felt as though the gameplay was ever the main focus. It's just a thing to fill the time, and also because it's the Witcher game.
Yes! Well, that's also, I guess, partially maybe why I like Thronebreaker very much, is because a lot of it's a story. You're making decisions. You're making story decisions constantly. And yeah, you have the card games, but okay, first of all, I love Gwen, so that was easy. But also they have these little puzzles everywhere. They have puzzles with card games, and I really enjoyed those as well. And it seemed like it fit so much more into the vibe of the entire game. And it still felt like a Witcher game to me. Whereas, again, Geralt, I get it. Geralt's a Witcher, he has to fight. It just never feels good. I never felt like I really wanted to play it at the highest difficulty because it didn't really do anything for me. Whereas when I played, for example, the newest Star Wars game, Fallen Order, I really enjoyed playing that one on the hardest difficulty because I had to think about what I was doing. And in The Witcher 3, there's builds to do that for you.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I really love... Like, I'm not gonna go into it, so I really love the combat inside of Fallen Order.
Yes, it's really good.
I hope they don't change that.
Well, I mean, it was really well received, so I doubt it. That would be weird. Witcher has a problem with having a defined character in its title. I'd love a game in the Witcher universe where you can be a mage or just a regular human. It would be great for stories in RPG. Yes, exactly. But the thing is, as well, of Alvaniel, they did say that they're not making The Witcher 4. We're calling it The Witcher 4 because that makes sense. Everyone recognizes The Witcher as a title, but they explicitly said they did not announce The Witcher 4. They announced a game in the Witcher setting, which hopefully means that we might get the choice to not play as a Witcher. I wouldn't mind if Witcher 4 got some inspiration from its combat from Fallen Order or God of War. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I hope that it does.
Yes, because I would really like to enjoy the combat. I would like the combat to feel, maybe not Dark Soulsy, and I know that everyone's constantly copying Dark Souls either way, but I would like it to be more involved because as great as Geralt looks and moves, he feels stilted in combat. When you roll, the roll is not iframe perfect.
I feel like when you're
you're
kind of just flailing about.
You are. Yeah. I almost feel like they tried to make it look as realistic as possible, the way that that Geralt would fight, But at the same time, it's a fantasy game. You don't really need to do that. And when Geralt jumps back, he feels slow. He feels extremely slow. Nothing feels smooth about it. And again, when you roll to try and avoid an attack, 90% of the time you get hit anyway, because there's no iframe immunity. And really, again, Geralt has a fat roll the whole time. He's very much over-encumbered. So it just doesn't feel good. The Witcher dress-up game. The Witcher 2 is kind of that. Listen, if I can do fashion souls in The Witcher, I would be here for it. I also love the Thronemaker. It just feels clunky. Yes, I think that's the word I'm looking for. It feels like you have huge input delay. It does feel like that. Name a more non-existent duo than CD Projekt and the combat. I haven't played Cyberpunk yet, so I can't tell you if that combat would vibe better with me, but... What you're saying is you really want a Witcher interactive novel, a visual novel. Yes and no. What I want is a Witcher 3 with, like I said, combat that is good. And the combat is serviceable as it is. And I know that that's maybe, again, that's a flaring hot take, but I really don't think the combat is very good.
I also like the concept of, like, if they were to ever take inspiration from something like Fallen Order, because I feel like that's a good middle ground between, like, it's not the super difficult Dark Souls gameplay, but you still have to, like, actively think about what you're doing rather than just filling around. And I feel like that works really well, especially for fighting, like, monsters, for example. If they all you have to do something different with each one and put a little more thought into it rather than just, like, swinging.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially here, because I did say in The Witcher, the Lorethrough that I'm playing now, I immediately went for the adrenaline build because it's a very easy build. And it used to be Igni, and then they nerfed Igni, which I always feel like it's hilarious when a single player game gets nerfed after launch. I've never agreed with that. Regardless, the build that I'm doing now basically makes you immortal once you have enough talent points. And I think that says enough about how good the combat is and how much they want you to deal with it, because not really. And the specific wording that they used, Jail, was, we did not announce a Witcher 4. And I'm not sure what they mean by that because, well, I don't think anybody asked them. And if they did, they didn't answer. We'll hear more about it later. It's definitely not going to be a continuation of Geralt's story because they did already say that was ended. If it was Dark Souls light like Jedi Fallen Order, I'd be interested. Hardcore Dark Souls is just too difficult for me. Yes, and I do think that it would be prudent for them to keep a difficulty setting. A lot of Dark Souls players don't like difficulty settings because they make Dark Souls and beating it their entire personality. But I think it's always good to have a setting, and it would be good to have one setting that is specifically the way that the creators intended for you to beat the game. And then there's easier settings. And the easier settings really don't have to be that well balanced because generally I feel like if you go for an easier setting, you don't really want to deal with extreme difficulty or perfect balance. You just want to play the game. So I think if they find the middle ground there, and again, yes, I think Jedi Fallen Order was a very good example, then that would be good. I don't even know. Yes?
I was just gonna say, I feel like every time we call it, like, it makes sense why it's people, like, everybody is calling it The Witcher 4. I mean, I'm calling it The Witcher 4. But it's like it's like Dragon Age 4 in the sense of, like, we know that's not gonna be the actual title.
Yeah, for sure. I have not heard anything about Dragon Age 4 for a while. But yeah, for sure. I really hope they're going in a different direction with it. And I don't even know what key is rolling bound to in my game. We don't use it. What now, you piece of filth? Rolling in The Witcher 3 is just way worse than side jumping? No, it is. It is, exactly. And I think a lot of the times in The Witcher 3, if you're actually trying to survive, you're playing a higher difficulty, it usually suffices to just circle around your enemy constantly. And then,
I feel like whenever you're in The Witcher 3, it's kind of a gamble. It feels like you have no idea where you're rolling, even though you
yeah.
Like, you're just pressing the button and then, again, hoping that you go wherever direction you were hoping to.
Yeah, no, but that's why it feels kind of like an afterthought, so It makes sense, I guess, that it doesn't feel good. It's not The Witcher 4, but a Witcher character is pretty much guaranteed. We may get to choose between Witcher or Sorcerer, Sorceress, but I don't believe they will ever let us be a regular Joe Jill. I don't think they'll make us a regular character, but I do feel like perhaps they would consider not playing as a Witcher. And I also, in general, I feel like eventually playing as a Witcher would get a little bit stale, but that's a personal opinion. I know that a lot of people really want to play as a Witcher again, and I have nothing against that. I just want it to be done well, and I want there to be a good reason for The Witcher to exist. I think difficulty settings are perfectly fine in games like The Witcher. I think they would be a little bit out of place in Dark Souls. I don't think so necessarily. I think it would be good, because a lot of people like the environment in Dark Souls. I think in Dark Souls it would be good to have a setting that is akin to I just want to see the story. And at that point, you would literally just walk through there because you want to see the environments, you want to see the bosses, but you don't really want to do any difficult combats, which is perfectly fine. I always feel like it's strange to gatekeep that sort of thing, where no, you're not allowed to play Dark Souls unless you get very good at the game. I feel like that's a very strange way to look at things, because the game was made, they bought the game, let them enjoy the game the way that they want. And you could definitely make an argument to say, oh, well, then don't buy these games if you're not going to play them properly. But what is properly? You know what I mean?
I mean, I'm not a Dark Souls player, but also at the same time, I would say if it doesn't affect how you play the game, in the sense of, like, if you want to play the game like how it's traditionally played, nobody is, like, having another difficulty level there isn't stopping you from doing that.
No, exactly. No, and I think that's the main thing. I am also not asking for them to make a very in-depth difficulty system, but just give people a way to see this game, to enjoy this game. And then maybe if they've played through it on that lower difficulty, maybe they'll be more inspired to try a higher difficulty. But at the same time, let people enjoy things. I guess that's the main, that's what I mean. Let people enjoy things. Also, hi, Runner. I just want CD Projekt to stick to their roots and make what they're known for and most comfortable with. I don't want another situation like Anthem, where a single-player story studio is forced to make a live service game. Yes, and I do trust CD Projekt with that. That's the one thing. I trust CD Projekt to make the game that they want to make. At the moment, I don't feel like they would get pressured into making something that they hate or that they're not happy with. Also because I feel like the shareholders need to give them a little bit of trust in that sense. They did apparently fix Cyberpunk well enough so that it's now a good game. And in general, Cyberpunk got pushed out earlier when it wasn't done yet because of shareholders. So maybe at this point, they realized that they shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, because I know originally the developers wanted, like, an additional 2 years, so
yeah, because they knew it wasn't done.
Yeah, it's like, I can't imagine, like, say, like, you know for a fact, like, you need, like, literally 2 more years or something on this game. Like, that's a lot of time, too. And it's like, no, you have to push it out way too early.
Yeah, and I never understood that. I do understand partially that at some point the money runs out. I get that. But this is very much the case of, was it Miyamoto who said this? A bad game is forever bad, but or something like that. Or an early game? What's the quote again? Anyway, if you do it early and it sucks, it's forever bad. And if it's not, then it's good. That's what I'm trying to say. So just make your game, let it have its stamp, because everyone still talks about The Witcher 3 right now as The Witcher 3 being this amazing game. Everyone loves it. Everyone still recommends it to their friends. You cannot say the same for Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk has been consistently... I guess everyone just hates it. If they've played it back then, they played it back then, they're not going to say play Cyberpunk because they hated it. Whereas if it was good from the start, everyone would have said, wow, it's amazing. And all the people who were still on the fence would say, okay, I'm going to buy it too now. And then those people would love it and it would spread further, just like The Witcher 3. That's basically how it worked. Word of mouth did a lot for The Witcher 3. And yeah, Cyberpunk didn't, to say it mildly. I play Elden Ring for the dress-up aspect as well. I play most games for dress-up. I always imagined a Witcher fighting style is extremely efficient and fast. It would not translate. That's why there's always pirouettes and flashy moves. They just look and feel better, even if inefficient. Also, short dodge for the win. Only ever roll to move faster. Yes. No, exactly. I would like the combat to be a lot faster. Any Elder Scrolls fans? Wait, are they also forgetting Elder Scrolls? I wouldn't get mad like a lot of people who basically scream at everyone who wants a difficulty setting in Dark Souls, and the atmosphere world experience is a good point. To me, a lower difficulty setting just makes more sense in a story-focused game like The Witcher, as compared to a game that's very much about the gameplay like the Souls game. Oh yeah, for sure, but that's a thing as well, right? I play Souls games because of the gameplay, and also because of the setting. But I know that there's, for example, a mod that removes all of the enemies from Dark Souls, so people can just walk through and look at everything and just be amazed by how good it looks. And I think there are people who would buy a game just for that, and to deny them that seems odd. I guess they could always install the mod, of course, but I don't really see how removing all the enemies would be a difficult, quote-unquote, setting to implement either at that point. Cosplay, this is what it means going further beyond? Wait, what? Okay,
I feel like... I don't know. I also think, and again, people who play Dark Souls can tell me otherwise. I feel like if there were ever introducing different difficulties to a game like Dark Souls, it's like you could have it be like, how would you call it, like stepping blocks, in the sense of you know, just how traditionally it would be, but it's like, it's the same basic concept. Like, for example, you might start, like, a lower difficulty could be something more like Fallen Order, which is same basic concept, just a lot more manageable. And that way people can still learn over time and gradually get to the harder setting that Dark Souls is known for, because you're still having to implement the same level of thinking to some extent.
I agree.
But it makes the game a lot more accessible for people who are interested in the game and in the world, while still giving them something to, you know, play and actually react to.
Yeah, I think that the main mistake that a lot of... Oh, I don't want to call it a mistake because they don't really care, obviously, but a lot of Souls fans will be very unhelpful to newer players, because even when someone tries a Souls game for the first time and they ask for help, which they're still playing on the same difficulty, they just need some help, they only get good as an answer, which is just monumentally unhelpful. So...
Oh my god. Yeah, it's like I've either seen, like, when I saw somebody playing Dark Souls for the first time, and all the things that people were doing was like either telling her get good, or they would come into her game and break all of her gear.
Yes, yes, and invasions constantly. Yeah, it's just not fun. Also Highlander. But yeah, no, and I think if you put combat like that in a Witcher game, because I do like combat like that, if you put combat like that in a Witcher game, you need a difficulty setting, because The Witcher, I want the combat to feel that smooth, but I also recognize that The Witcher is a story-driven game in the end, or should be, for me anyway. And if you don't give that a difficulty slider, then it's just going to be completely inaccessible for most people. There's going to be mods made for it, of course, but I don't think that should be necessary.
Yeah.
Souls fandom sounds like my parents. Oh, fellas. Anyway, we are actually almost at the end of this short podcast already, so let's very quickly talk about the White Frost and the way the Witcher 3 handled it, which, for the people unaware, the White Frost is mentioned in the books reasonably shortly by Alvalach, who in essence says, well, it's another ice age. Humanity will survive, just like you always do, but it's annoying, which is why he was painting bisons on the cave wall, because he was trying to preserve his elven cemetery. Anyway, I am not a fan of how they handled that in The Witcher 3, which... In The Witcher 3, it becomes the big bad. The White Frost is the overarching general threat that threatens not just the Witcher world, but also the NL world all of a sudden. So this is completely counter to the canon books, because it's not an all-devouring storm that goes from world to world, from portal to portal to devour yet another world in ice. It's just an ice age. It's just a regular ice age. And then at the end of The Witcher 3, you have Ciri fighting the White Frost. And I just want to know how that happened. But Raven, give me your thoughts on that.
I've forever am just finding it hilarious, the idea of Ciri trying to fight the White Frost. It's just, I want to see how that actually looked. I feel like also, the whole thing with the White Frost is, where it became relevant in The Witcher 3, it felt like it came just out of nowhere, because at that point, you're always just thinking, okay, it's the Wild Hunt, and then they're like, oh, but actually, it's the White Frost. And then they do the weird thing of, like, in a way, it kind of, even though it goes from world to world, it feels like, even then, Avallac'h is kind of like, oh, well, it's a natural event in a way. But it's, in the same time, they're at, like, no explanation. Ciri just is like, I gotta go and I gotta fight it. It's like, how?
Yeah, I think it ties really well into the fact that the end of The Witcher 3 in general feels extremely rushed. That it's almost like they were crafting The Witcher 3 and they were weaving this beautiful tapestry, and then their mother came into the room and said, Johnny, you have to get here for dinner. And he was like, okay, let me just, okay. And then he cross-stitched like a random ending to the tapestry and ran downstairs for dinner. That's how it feels. And the weird cross-stitch is the White Frost, because, yeah, Ciri goes there, and what does she do? Is she gonna play fisticuffs with a snowstorm? Or what is the deal? Because apparently she's supposed to defeat... First of all, this is also actually something that is technically counter to... Not even technically, it really is. In the books, the prophecy is always about Ciri's child. So Ciri is going to have a child, and that child will either destroy the world, rule the world, or rebirth the world, depending on which prophecy you want to go with. But here they make it Ciri. Ciri is she's gonna stop the White Frost, which she goes in there and she has the powers of teleportation and she has the powers of going through time. So how is that relevant to fighting a snowstorm? Is she gonna put it back in the past? Because then it's still there. It's still gonna eventually hit us, just later down the line.
The inevitable.
Yeah, and if you're portaling it away in general to a different place, well, we've already established that apparently the White Frost just encroaches on every world very slowly. So it would just come back. So neither route really fixes anything. So she would have to have another way of defeating the White Frost. That other way is what? Trap it with the Yrden? What did you do, Ciri? It just doesn't make any sense. And like you said as well, it comes out of nowhere that all of a sudden Avallac'h sends her over there, when this is something he could have discussed with Ciri as well as Geralt. Because we enter there, the portal has opened, Ciri's standing in front of it, Avallac'h is keeping the portal open, Geralt sees this and goes, oh, what are you doing? And they have this little back and forth, and then Ciri just says, I have to go, and then she just goes. But what was the reason that you couldn't just talk about this before? What was the reason?
Oh my gosh, it's fighting, isn't it? It's the same thing about, like, why does Ciri trust Avallac'h more than Yennefer? It's like,
yeah,
it's like, why do you talk about this to Geralt or anybody?
And I always feel like this is something I feel like I'm almost one of the only people who ever talks about the things I don't like about The Witcher 3. Even though I love this game to death, I love it so much, but I think it's important to still note that there's these glaring issues, and this is, I think, one of the biggest ones, because, okay, what could have happened? So Avallac'h would say to Geralt and to Yennefer, hey, what's up? The White Frost is coming. We're all gonna die if your girl doesn't go and close it. And then Ciri would back him up and be like, yeah, I want to close the White Frost portal or whatever. I want to do something about it. And then Geralt and Yennefer could either say, okay, yes, that sounds very reasonable. I too do not want the world to end. Or they could say, I think that's too dangerous. You shouldn't go. And then Ciri could still do the same thing, where she says, no, I am a grown woman now and I'm going to make my own decision. This is what I'm going to do. And Avallac'h is going to help me.
At least then it would have more build-up rather than whatever the heck happened.
Yes, exactly. It makes absolutely no sense.
That's really what, like, if they wanted to really take this and make it the storyline, this should have been, like, a thing that was established way earlier and talked about way earlier, and that's what you're building up to. But I mean, at this end of the day, I feel like at the same time, if it were really up to me, I wish they just kept it focused on the Wild Hunt rather than.
Same. I also don't understand why they made it so that the White Frost is now also threatening the world of the NL. Why? Because it makes them sympathetic almost. Because the NL world and the NL in general, they were set up as to be selfish, to be just everything is about them. They have human slaves. They completely genocided the human population of that world, which was very likely our original world. And that's their whole setup, that they want to take this young girl, they want to take Ciri, they want to forcibly impregnate her to get the power back so that they can invade other world and destroy those two. That's their entire thing in the books. And then in The Witcher 3, oh wait, no. Their world is being threatened by the White Frost, so really they're just desperately trying to run from this White Frost problem. And that's why they're doing all this. And no, why are you trying to make them less evil? They're genuinely they're completely interested only in themselves. They do not need a reason to want to take this world, because that was always the plan. So I don't know why they changed that. Just some light genocide. Idea, Ciri killing Eredin is the big climax of the game. Eredin was also wasted. Eredin was completely wasted, because what did Eredin do? Eredin is the big bad. He's the guy who leads the Wild Hunt, and he gets this moment, which also does not happen in the books, where he goes, "Long live the king," because he killed the king. And then he just dies like a chump. He gets maybe... Well, how many lines does he get? She won't abandon you? That's one of his lines. And kill them, and then he has a little bit of a back and forth, not even a very long one, with Geralt when he kills them. That's it. That's all he gets. Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, like, I have such conflicting feelings about, like, whether I would have preferred if Eredin not die or not. Because the thing is, I feel like Eredin's fight, in a way, only exists because they felt like you needed a big boss fight at the end. But here's the thing. I do feel as though that should have been Ciri and not Geralt.
I agree. I agree. No, I agree. 100%. And yeah, he should have ran. I don't think Caranthir should have died. I think he was also wasted. I think honestly,
oh my God.
Most of the Wild Hunt is wasted.
I wish we had learned more about him, honestly. Like, what?
Yes, because he's such an interesting type. Because he, according to the lore there, was that he was the apprentice that Avalak took on in an attempt to replace Ciri, to a point. Mm-hmm. And then Avalak, I guess, defected and left, which is very strange that Caranthir didn't follow him, because Avalak is a sage, and it's very well known that sages have their own designs. Caranthir would be more inclined to follow Avalak than he would Eredin, but we don't know what happened there, because we never get any information about him.
There's so many character interactions that could have happened that didn't.
Yes, and I feel like that's partially because they flipped from making this a Wild Hunt focused story to making this a family focused story, which focused on Ciri and Geralt and Yennefer, which I like that part very much. But it shows that the Wild Hunt was at one point the focus, and then it stopped being the focus, and everything became a bit of a mess when it comes to the Wild Hunt, because, yeah, I feel like the ending would have been better served if Caranthir hadn't died, because he can teleport, he can portal. Why wouldn't he portal at that point? Is Ciri gonna follow him to the NL worlds? I don't think so. So it would have been better if these fights were supposed to happen parallel to each other. So Ciri would be fighting Eredin, because I think that's a better matchup. Mm-hmm. Also because they have more history together. Geralt's never met this guy. And then Geralt could be fighting Caranthir, because we don't know anything about him either. Nobody knows anything about him, so they could be fighting. Then Caranthir either senses that Eredin is losing, or starts losing himself, so he portals to Eredin and takes them back to the NL worlds, because he is a navigator, he can do that. There's no portals to open otherwise, he just leaves everyone else behind, and they leave. Because defeating them like this, what happens to the NL now? They're just a bureaucratic elven society that does nothing, and what is the point of them anymore at this point? Calanthe and Ciri bonding over having to deal with Ava's bullshit. Did he make you? Yes, he did. Oh, did you hate that? Yes, I did. A viable ending for Calanthe judging his character would be, oh shit, we're losing. I'm gonna teleport away and live to blood and A. No, exactly, Elvaniel. Exactly, Elvaniel. I agree completely. That's what I would have liked to see happen. And it didn't. Instead, they both died like chumps. They had that one guy that we had in the last Lorethrough, or the Lorethrough before that. I already forgot his name again because he was so nobody. He was such a nothing burger.
NPC number 123.
I know. Yeah. He was just sitting there and then he died. And he was apparently the replacement for Gels, Gels was supposed to be a Wild Hunt general and then he wasn't. And they replaced him with that chump. And I just... Nithral, there's... Oh my... He was such a waste also. The only one that is marginally interested is our lad. But he dies pretty quickly too. And I think it's even funnier that he asks, like, Imlerith kills Vesemir. And he has been fighting them. He's been fighting the Witchers. And then Geralt kills him. And Imlerith goes, who taught you to fight like that? And you fought him. You've been fighting people who do this.
Now I'm thinking about, like, what? Like, I feel like... I mean, I get it. But at the same time, I'm like... Again, I don't know. I guess it's between that and the Crones. But the thing is, I would have preferred Ciri actually be more involved in fighting against the Wild Hunt, other than when she did at the very end. Like, it's...
Yeah, because they're always saying, oh, she can't join the fight because it's too dangerous. But the only reason they're saying that is because they don't want her to use her overpowered abilities. That's it. Which, if that was a problem, you could have just given her less overpowered abilities, because these were not things that she could do in the books. She didn't have these teleporting powers in combat. She didn't have those zones. You didn't have to give her these abilities. You just did. The Witcher 3 ending seems like a power fantasy ending instead of a Witcher-style ending, that all the bad guys are killed, plain and simple, and the good guys cheer, and it's all amazing and wonderful. That as well. There's not really... And I'm not necessarily asking for a bitter aftertaste, but there never really seems to be a moment where I'm worried about anybody. I never felt during the ending that anyone was going to die. The only moment that happened was after all the fighting was over, and they implied that Ciri was dead, which was in the Witcher ending. Witcher Ciri ending, I should say. And that was less about the actual stakes and more about the game just saying, haha, she's dead. I bet you think she's dead because we're telling you that she is. We're implying completely that she is because we have Geralt saying that she's dead, which is a little bit of a cop-out as well. If we had an enemy as cunning as Avalak on the other side, the whole climax would be so much more exciting. I would have preferred if Avalak was not on our side. It feels very weird.
I was said before, that they were, people felt as though Avalak, that there may have been a twist with him at the end. Like, I can't say for certain, but I know it's, like, really weird to me that Avalak just kind of disappears at the end. Like, he's never talked about again.
No, exactly.
So it's like, I wish... Like, the fact that Avalak, in the end, like, wasn't actually plotting to do something technically selfish, it's like, that feels off.
Yeah, especially because he's such a haughty character. And in this case, he was really trying to save the world, and it just feels out of character. Sapkowski's goal with his ending in Ciri was to deconstruct fantasy tropes, which are three the opposite. Their ending was so tropey it felt off. Yes, and I think that's also partially why it felt so rushed, because they were trying desperately to really quickly tie up these loose ends, and they ended it in a way where everyone was happy. Obviously, you can get the bad ending in which Ciri ostensibly dies, which... Okay, I guess. And then Geralt also, again, ostensibly dies, but he comes back for blood and wine, so it's fine. So...
Every time I'm thinking about that ending, because I know for a fact that Blood and Wine technically does take place after The Witcher 3.
Yeah.
So it's like he walked it off. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't think The Witcher 3's... That's why I always say The Witcher 3's base game is my least favorite story. There are so many things I love about it. I love the Baron's quest. I love finding Ciri. I love getting to know these characters that you otherwise don't really talk much about. I love spending all this time with Yennefer. I think the mage quest line in Novigrad is amazing. But they fumble the ball by the end. They really do. They snatch the White Frost out of the air as okay, let's use that, I guess. And then they call it a day.
Yeah, it's like, why I would say, even though it still isn't perfect, I still prefer The Witcher 2, how it ended compared to The Witcher 3, because it felt more like an actual ending in a way with The Witcher 2 than The Witcher 3 did, because The Witcher 3's last act is so rushed and just all over the place. It's like, I don't know where the White Frost came from.
No one does. CD Projekt doesn't know. But that's the thing. That's why I think the roach question I asked was so telling. So at some point during Gamescom, I asked what happened to Kelpie, and they couldn't answer the question. They made a joke out of it, but they basically couldn't answer the question. And I think that is it's very telling about the rest of the thought process. They didn't think about why things happened at that point, because where did Kelpie go? Where did the White Frost come from? Why is it suddenly like this? Why is Avallac'h working with Ciri, and why does she immediately trust him at that point? Why is Eredin here and not being actually clever the way he was in the books?
I feel like their flimsy way of trying to explain the whole reason why Ciri trusts Avallac'h is because it's like, oh man, she's, I guess, been traveling with him through different worlds for I don't know how long. But it's like, even then, I feel like one of the core things of Ciri's character is that she cares about Geralt and Yennefer. She would never trust anyone more than she trusts them, I feel. So it's like...
Yes, and in general, I don't necessarily think that Ciri really hated Avallac'h in the books. I think they had a very strenuous relationship, but he, out of all the NL, was the least threatening. But that still doesn't mean that he was a good person, and it was made very clear that he had his own designs, and that if she had been unwilling to sleep with the King of the Elders, they would have just found another way, shall we say, which is
all around.
It's very similar to what Vilgefortz in the end wants. They're just giving her the option to do it the more natural way, which...
yeah, that
yeah, no, exactly.
It's terrifying.
Yes, and the whole deal with Avallac'h is that you never really know what he wants, so he could tell you one thing, but he's not telling you the whole truth. He never is. And Ciri just going along with it without informing Geralt and Yennefer. I think that's one of the things that is the strangest. You don't hear anything about Avallac'h from Ciri. Just that they traveled, which is a very vague, very nebulous concept. We traveled together and now we're friends. But they don't tell us how they met, how she was approached, what he told her. Yennefer and Geralt never hear anything about this, and they are the people that she literally left the world for because they were no longer in it, so she didn't want to be a part of it. It just feels like she would have at least mentioned it. I like the Battle of Caramorn a lot. The assemble aspect of it was like a payoff. Yes, I also very much enjoyed that part, 100%. And yeah, Kelpie is Ciri's horse. It's a black horse that has incredible jumping power.
We talked about it last, like the Battle of Caramorn. Felt like it should have been near where the game ended because that's like. That would have been good. That would have been good. I think, honestly, they should have ended at the Battle of Kaer Morhen, and then they should have made the rest into a DLC because it would have given them more time to make it better, to make it polished. To actually not use the White Frost and make and actually focus more on the people that they kept saying were the antagonists of the game. Yes, exactly. Because the title of the game is The Wild Hunt, and the Wild Hunt is so toothless. So toothless. They kill Vesemir, but that's it. That's really all they do. That's the only accomplishments. They can't catch Ciri even when she's right in front of their nose.
Avalok held her at choke point when she was 15 and said when like, this sign can't stop me because I can't read.
Yeah. I always remember that specific moment because I feel so bad for Siri like so many times, and it's like in that moment it's like his Avalok, if I'm not mistaken, in that moment it's like he that feels like he more or less just kind of snaps.
He does, because
it's because she compares herself to Lara Doran.
No, even worse. She says, "Why don't you fuck me? Because I'm so much like her."
Yeah,
which is not. I mean,
I hate it so much.
Yeah, it's you know what? And it's those chapters, Ellis, and it's the Bonhart chapters that give me a lot of. I almost want to say anxiety. People often ask me to make a video about Bonhart. I never want to make a video about Bonhart. I hate that man so much.
I hate Bonhart. His series, like her, any like, it makes me feel like you said. It gives me anxiety.
Yeah, no, but for real, I when I reread the books, which I can't stop rereading the books. I skim through the Bonhart chapters. I'll be honest. I speed read those like mad. Letho is so much more interesting as the antagonist in the Assassin's King than The Witcher 3 is. Wild Hunt is in Witcher 3. I agree completely, Doinan. I agree completely, but I might be a little biased as well. The Witcher 2 is my favorite story in general because it's so polished. It feels good. It feels like they really thought of everything. And The Witcher 3 is the opposite. Why did Avalok get separated from Eredin? Was that something explained in the books? No, they never talk about it. I think that's also something that you might have learned more about if they didn't cut this, because I guess did I talk about this on the Lorethrough already? I'm going to talk about it now. A good part of the cut content had Geralt infiltrate the Wild Hunt. So at some point they pivoted and cut out 90% of the Wild Hunt stuff, but initially, their initial plan was for Geralt to use an illusion, something like that, to look like one of the Wild Hunt riders and to infiltrate them, which makes sense because he ran with them before, so he would know their mannerisms and things like that easily enough. So he would infiltrate them to try and find Ciri, to get information on Ciri and find her. And at that point, I imagine you would hear more about their falling out, why she is running with Avalok right now, how he left, why Eredin is leading everything now, because he is the leader of the Duagriadri, he's the Red Rider, but he's not, they never really say that he's next in line for the throne or anything like that, or even how their political system even works, so it's very, again, it's very, let's just have this happen. Vilgefort's conversations with Ciri and Yennefer are the most sick parts, in my opinion. Vilgefort's is also disturbing. I think he's more disturbing towards Ciri than he is towards anybody else. When he talks to Yennefer about Ciri and Geralt, it's more to try and bait her. But when it comes to Ciri, oh man. Ciri does not have a good time in the books. You love Bonhart, and that's fair. If you enjoy the character, that's obviously not something I'm okay with that entirely. I like characters that are very problematic too. Yeah.
I get reminded of that dude in The Witcher 1.
Oh, that guy who's a massive Bonhart stan.
Yeah.
I just love Bonhart so much. Oh my god. Please, Bonhart, let me suck your dick. Oh, he will not shut up about Bonhart. I always kill him. I always kill him. Every time. Hello there, Aris. Hello, good time zone. I like Bonhart as a character concept, but what he does is quite sick. I think he's an interesting concept, but I think he is a concept that is pulled too far. I think they make it too much. Which is, it's cathartic when he dies, but at the same time, it's just uncomfortable to read. In the books, they're both known as the Fox and the Sparrowhawk, which would implicate they were friends, or no. So the names do not come from them. The names come from the unicorns. They call them the Fox and the Sparrowhawk, and that's because they are enemies to them. They largely, comes back to a theory that I had that and it's almost not a theory anymore. I feel like it has enough basis to be fact. but that the unicorns initially helped the NL teleport from world to world, and then they stopped doing that, and they started a fight. They started a war because they no longer wanted to aid them in their teleportation endeavors, which is why the Elder Blood was created, likely with the blood of the unicorns, so that they didn't need the unicorns to teleport anymore. Mistake my Witcher sword and venture out. Have good dinner. Old Leo. Yeah, I do not like him. Actually, one of another question that we did have on the podcast, and we are going to call it very soon because we've already overtimed a little bit, was what Ciri, or what Bonhart, his 3 medallions, where they went. So Ciri takes the cat medallion, and the wolf medallion goes to Geralt because he lost his. Where does the griffin go? Where does the griffin medallion go? I don't know. Nobody talks about it anymore.
Ciri left it with Kelpie.
Oh, yes, of course. In the other realm with Roach. Yeah, it's just never brought up, and I think that's so interesting. Where did that go? See, people, this is a, what is it? What do you call that? A Mandela effect? She doesn't give it to Yennefer. So
I've heard multiple times where people were like, she gave it to Yennefer. I'm like, where did this come from?
She never did. She never did. I hear this a lot as well. It's on forums a lot, and I looked through the books a million times. She doesn't give it to Yennefer. So does she just throw it away? Does she just not want Bonhart to have it?
I know that, like, I mean, in a way, there's no telling this. I just want to think that maybe Ciri would care to some extent of, like, do her own version of, I suppose, maybe laying that witch or whoever they were to rest kind of thing. And
yeah, maybe.
Putting it somewhere, or burying it or something.
Tell me, Vargas, where that's implied. Where is it implied? Because I've read the books a lot of times. And I'm not seeing it. That was Tyrion's second question. Tell me, Father, where does Griffin Witcher medallion go? We don't know. But I like to think that she buried it. Where, Vargas? Outside of you telling me in Twitch chat, where is it implied? I'm this close to opening the books to start looking at it again. Because this is something that has bothered me for years. It bothers me to this day because I can't find a solid answer. And I don't think has anyone ever asked Sapkowski about this? I wonder.
I've never read it. Like, I can't remember having read about Ciri giving the Griffin medallion to Yennefer.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. I haven't either. But the internet is so.
Is this a like at his hair color thing again?
Yeah, maybe it's in the dynastic description. Well, no, I guess why would that ever be in the dynastic description? That would be very strange if it was. I'm doing the Google right now. Yeah, no, the last mention of it in the books is she just tore from his neck the medallions, the wolf, the cat, and the griffin. Then she turned around and walked towards the exit. That's it. That's the last you hear of it. And then later down, you do get him to hear this. She put the cat around her neck and gave Geralt the wolf. And that's it. That's all they say.
Then I'm just gonna headcanon that she buries it after at some point.
I wonder what he meant to do, if he had an idea about it at some point. If at some point he thought, okay, so there's three medallions, and obviously the cat makes sense for Ciri and the wolf makes sense for Geralt. But did he have a plan for it and just forgot? Where he was just like, oh yes, we're gonna run into maybe that Cohen would get it? Because Cohen is...
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe it's in a way, not only just for that witch or whoever they were, but it could remind her of Cohen. If Cohen were...
Well, I'm wondering about that, right? What if her, or Sapkowski's plan was for Ciri in the books to hear about Cohen's death because Cohen dies, and for her to visit his grave if he had one and put the medallion there. I feel like that would be nice. They had a bond.
Yeah, I think it could be. I was gonna say, like, if Cohen was like a Griffin school witcher, that it could be a way of like I was saying, putting that witcher individually to rest, but also in a way for her putting Cohen to rest or paying her respect to him.
No, exactly, because it's like a farewell, and they had that entire scene of her playing with Cohen in Caramorn, and it was very nice, very bonding.
It was wholesome.
Yes, no, it was wholesome. He just wrote the books, he didn't read them, but it's like, it's such a... Again, I have to wonder about it. It's definitely prime fanfic material. I feel like it could go anyway. I feel like at this point, CD Projekt could still say that the medallion still exists. And that maybe that leads her to doing something in The Witcher 4, but apparently there's no information on what happened to the Griffin medallion after Ciri took it. Yeah, that's why I said that there's a Mandela effect going on, where a lot of people will be adamant that the Griffin medallion was given to Yennefer, but that never happened. It's more an assumption because technically it would make sense. She takes the 3 medallions, she walks down the stairs, she gives one to herself, one to Geralt, and then Yennefer is just kind of there. There is still 1 medallion available, but so why doesn't she give it to her? And like, I mean, she shouldn't ever, because there's actually a mention about Witcher medallions in the books from Triss's perspective, where she says never to touch or it's not advised to touch a Witcher's medallion during the equinox, I think it is, because they're magically potent. So it's probably not wise for a sorceress to just have a Witcher's medallion if it's that magically potent. Would that be the one question you have for Seb? Where's that Griffin medallion? I have several questions for him. I don't think he remembers, because a lot of the times he's been giving questions and he just doesn't remember. He's like, oh, did I do that in the books? Okay, I guess I did. At least the Polish fandom has no answer. Yeah, because it's not in the books. And I don't think the games ever talk about it either. I was mad that he killed Menno Cohorn. I thought it was hilarious how he died, though. Yeah,
Menno Cohorn's death is like one of the funniest things. I still always remember that. Like, it's especially when you're playing The Witcher 2 and you're asked about it. It's
just with a mouthful of swamp mud. Oh boy, no, I love that death. I'm sorry. The first question would be, why are you the way that you are, to be honest?
I mean, that is a fair question.
Sokolsky, please. Yeah, I love his books, but definitely at some points I have questions. Menno's death was hilarious, especially because it was the dwarves that done it and they had this whole little conversation around it. Fantastic. What is it with you and torturing teenage girls? Do you want to talk about it? And actually, if you do, don't talk to me. Talk to somebody else. But yeah, that's oh my god. We actually only got to... Well, technically we discussed the wild hunt, which we were not necessarily going to do. So there were other questions we wanted to talk about. But I'm afraid we do not have the time. So that will have to be next time. Actually, on the next podcast question, I have written down where is Kelpie, but we've talked about that quite a bit now, so we're probably going to switch that one around a little bit. If you guys still have any questions, yes.
Switch where is Kelpie with just talking about Yordvet instead.
To be fair, yes, he's on the list, so we could. But if you have any other questions, then let us know. And maybe we'll have time to talk about that next time. We only actually have one more podcast episode, which is the 12th of May. As you can tell, while we talk about The Witcher, we also go off on tangents a lot. His death was sad. Like, he was a good officer and a decent man, but most of those do die pointlessly. I feel like that was the point of the Battle of Brenna as well, right? Especially since they also had the poor fucking infantry. The poor fucking infantry that actually completely countered, was it the Nausicaa Brigade? That crashed into them. And they were stopped by the poor fucking infantry. The PFI!
Thank you, Danny. By the way.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. Thank you, Danny, because actually everyone can give her a few compliments because I keep trying, but she doesn't believe that she's fun to listen to. But I think she is. So you're welcome to tell her that multiple times. Tangents are the best part of the podcast. I try to keep things very much to The Witcher, but I also have a tendency to go on and on and on and on. Magic was extremely underplayed in The Witcher 3. Just gonna leave it here. Yes. In most of them. Hmm?
Oh, wait. No, I was just agreeing that magic is extremely underplayed.
I think we actually, we technically had on the list of missed opportunities that we want to talk about was Mage Society. So we can just move that to next. We will replace the Kelpie one with that instead.
Thank you, Landar.
Tangents here in this house. The most fun.
You.
Go on.
Thank you.
The most fun thing was if Cohorn stayed in his armor, he would have lived. I know, but here's the thing. He ran off as well. I don't think he should have. I think he just shouldn't have ran off in general. Because I think it's his other generals that tell him to leave and tell him to save himself. Which was a terrible idea. Terrible idea. There's only love and respect for Raven in this house. There is. Thank you very much for being my fellow podcast host today. I appreciate it. Well, eventually he wanted to. He was like, oh yeah, okay, I guess I'll leave. Very welcome, Jeff. Tomorrow we continue The Witcher Lorethrough, The Witcher 3 Lorethrough. We are gonna try and get a lot done in the main story quests, which means we will not do a lot of Gwent. I will try to hold myself accountable.
There will be Gwent.
There will probably be some Gwent. But I'm gonna try to keep it to a minimum. We'll say that. We're gonna go to Skellige, so I will do a lot of Skellige Gwent on my own. I'm not a monster. I will see you for that, and thank you very much for joining us today. We're talking about The Witcher, and also, weirdly, a lot of Dark Souls and MMOs in general. See you on the Lorethrough. Good night, and this was Raven, my lovely host.
Good time zone, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Good time zone, everyone, and until next time, stay wonderful, stay awesome, and I hope your pillow is cold on both sides today, and va fail.